Welcome, everybody. We are here with Dr. Keith Garden and with Barbara Jackson. Dr. Keith Garden from Stratagem Training. Stratagem is a financial training company, and they train all kinds of people around finances and compliance and governance in various specific areas. And Barbara Jackson from Ghana, and Barbara runs with Rainbow Consult. That is a company that also specifically consults to SMMEs and trains and develops SMMEs. So we're going to be looking here at governance. And Keith, without saying a further word, I'm going to hand over to you to take us further.
Thank you, Vibrant, and good day, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for your time. And yeah, we've got an hour together to try and cover a subject which is, I think, incredibly interesting. The problem is, I think when we are, and I'm talking to us as trainers that are going to be engaging directly with the small business owners, the SMEs, possibly the staff in small businesses, but also the owners, you might not find them as welcoming as you are to this. So one of our challenges as trainers is to try and as it were, sell them the benefits of why should I do this stuff? What's in it for me? And or are you just giving me extra work? Are you making rules and things that I have to stick to? And I don't have time for that because I'm very busy. I'm an entrepreneur, and of course we all know that story quite well. So linking to what Vibrant is going to be speaking to you about in another module, why should I do an anti-corruption program? And it's all about risk mitigation. It's all about risk management. Anti-corruption is a tool that we would have to fend off bad things that would happen to us as owners, that could get us into trouble with our reputations, that can threaten the survival of our business, and obviously be a risk to the growth. But, you know, corruption is not the only threat that's out there. Corruption is a very big threat, make no mistake, and it's part of governance, but governance is not only about anti-corruption. So we want to discuss that as a business tool, and that's what we're going to be doing in the next hour or so. We're saying that compliance and governance should be enablers, not disablers. They should assist, not insist. So a good mixture of compliance and governance will make for a well-functioning business. Depending on who's running the business, we will find less governance is required. Depending on the size of the business, we will see as we go along, we can scale this whole thing to suit the size of the business. And we're going to see that in a minute. So what are we going to cover in this little module? We're going to firstly look at what's the difference between compliance and governance. Is there a difference? And do I need one or the other, or do I need both? And maybe in different doses. So we're going to look at that. We want to look at how to scale this to suit each business. And remember, we are talking now specifically about the smaller businesses. There is in this whole train the trainer process, which deals with the bigger companies. Here we're dealing with the small guys, possibly less than 50 people in an organization, maybe as many as 150 to 200. But I think it would be rare that we're going to have businesses bigger than that, that we're going to be talking to. And guys, you'll notice in this module, and I think as trainers, it's important that we also just mention this. We're not talking about corporate governance. We're talking about governance. And I want us to be careful not to drop in that corporate word all the time, because the minute you do that, we're going to have glazed over eyes, because the minute you say that, oh, no, that's not for me, that's for the big guys. So, but compliance and governance are absolutely critical, no matter how small your business. So let's be careful to refer to it as governance rather than corporate governance, which the other module is all about. We're going to look at 5 key areas of governance, and those areas we've taken from the IFC document on corporate on governance for small businesses. And it's a great document. There's a reference to it in the back of your notes, and you can also get the link and download it. And for anyone who's going to train this module, I can recommend that you just go through that little module. It's very well written. It's nice. There are a lot of checklists in there. They're not the same checklists as we have, but it's all just good background information for us. And then lastly, what we want to do is just focus on the role of directors, because for the most part, these are entities. They are companies. They are legal entities which have been registered. And if one does carry the title director, one carries all sorts of legal responsibilities and liabilities. And certainly if our experience and, working with Vibrant over many years now with small business owners, they are all directors of a company, but they have no idea what the implications are of, doing your job as a director. There are legal things to be aware of. So that's where we're going, guys.
Keith, I'm just
just
for a minute thinking, you say there are legal things, but that doesn't mean you need to be a lawyer to train on governance, right?
No,
sometimes because you've got some experience in the field, and because you probably have some experience as a small business owner yourself, or having worked with a small business, that experience is incredibly valuable in this module as well.
Absolutely. And I think what's even more important is if you have some sort of a moral compass, which we all have, if we would listen to it, then you're going to be fine as a director, because that's what you're called upon to do as a director, is act in good faith. But there are some landmines which it is possible to stand on if you don't know where they are. And what we will obviously ask the guys to do is, this is country specific. So every country has its own Companies Act, and each Companies Act has its own version of what duties of directors are. And, we would urge you to, it's easy. You can Google it. It's 3 or 4 pages out of the Companies Act that you just have to check what are these duties and make sure your directors that you're talking to are just aware of them. That's not your job to be a legal expert, as Vibrant says, but to create that awareness so they can't say, oh, well, I never knew. Because, of course, ignorance of the law, we all know what that does. So, guys, I have a question
Keith,
for us. Baba.
Yes, Keith, before even your question, I'm so glad you mentioned that governance for SMEs is not so cumbersome or scary, and that it's something that is easy to do once you have a moral compass. And so for me, that has been mind-blowing, because then it's easier for us to, I am going to, sort of steal your words, and I'm going to use this whenever I'm talking to my SMEs. I feel like my opening statement is going to be governance. It's not cumbersome. It's not hard to achieve. It's just, sort of extending your moral compass and leaning onto it. And so I like that
Absolutely.
a lot. And I have learned a lot from. Yeah.
You're very welcome to steal that and use it free of charge. There you go.
I shall give you the credit too. And so all my participants are going to hear your name and learn about you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So let's get to it now, and let's ask that question: what is the difference between compliance and governance? And for ease of just traveling forward, Vibrant, could I ask you to have a go? What are your thoughts on what would the difference be between the two?
Sure, Keith. I would say compliance is certain things that you absolutely need to do because you're in a certain industry, or, if I think of my brother being a medical doctor and performing as a surgeon, there's certain compliance he absolutely needs to do before he does surgery, PPE and all of that. Governance, I think, has to do with, you're responsible to someone. you have certain level of responsibility to the shareholders of the company and the employees of the company, right? So I would say governance has got to do with that.
I like that. Thank you. Baba, anything you'd like to add there?
I think I agree with Vibrand, and a lot of the time I think about governance as my personification of the compliance laws.
I like that. I'm going to steal that now. Thank you.
We are family here, so yeah.
Yeah, it's give and take, eh? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're both absolutely right. Let's just quickly look at this. As Vibrand said, governance is yes, there's a bare minimum which one has to simply do. Otherwise, you get into trouble. You have to stick to the law. If you don't, you will get fined, or they'll put you out of business. Or so it's licensed to operate stuff. If you don't do it, something bad will happen to you. If you live in a country with laws and law-abiding citizens, we almost assume that this goes without saying. You do things right because you know what the right thing is, and part of that is understanding what the tax laws are, understanding what the employment laws are, understanding what the things are that will get you into trouble. So adherence to that, avoid trouble, and basically that gives you the license to function in the industry that's where you've chosen to function. So it's doing things right. That's what compliance is about. And of course, there are degrees of compliance. Some people just scrape by jumping one step ahead of the falling axe. Others are absolutely meticulous about making sure that their tax returns are never late, that all the things are done, their annual returns are done, all of that stuff. And it's actually easy stuff to do. And there's almost no excuse for getting into trouble with this stuff. And if you don't know what to do, there's professional help that can get you there. If you don't know how tax works, you get a tax guy to come and advise you. And once you know how to do it, you do it, and it's all good. So that's compliance. What about governance? Well, it's all about the higher level stuff. I don't want to just be in business. I want to be in a good business. And guys, what we're talking about here is on page 22 in the manual, in the notes that you have. So you can always check back on it and make sure you're comfortable with it. So we'll be following along with the workbook as well. So you don't have to make a whole bunch of notes because it's all going to be there for you. It's about managing the risk in the business. And guys, risk management, if you think about risk, spoke about it earlier, risk coming from corruption in your business. Now, if you listen to what Judge Mervyn King says, and he's the head of the International Reporting Federation, the integrated reporting body which governs all listed companies worldwide, all companies that are reporting to shareholders and stakeholders. He's quoted as saying the job of the board, in the case of SMEs, the job of the director or the directors is to manage risk. That's your job. And your job is not to avoid risk. If you want to avoid risk altogether, you should not be in business. If you want your business to be totally risk-free, it will underperform. So by embracing being an entrepreneur, you've already made peace with the fact that there's risk. Now we need to manage it. We need to make sure that it's not exceeding our appetite for risk or placing the business in jeopardy. A company with good governance will perform better than a company with no governance. We are trying to position our business for the long term. We're here for the long haul. We are wanting to leave a legacy. We are wanting to grow our business. And one day we are going to pass it on to our children, or we're going to sell it to a big listed company, or we're going to bring in new shareholders, you're going to bring in fresh capital, and your chances of attracting good investment are just so much better when you have good governance. So it's now an awareness of stakeholders. And that brings us to the triple bottom line. This is also a King Commission concept where Mervyn King says, no more can we make profit at the expense of our communities and at the expense of the environment. So we have a financial bottom line, so it's profit. We have an environmental bottom line, which is environment or planet. And we've got a community bottom line, which is people. So it's profit, planet, people, not necessarily in that order, but you may not pollute the rivers in pursuit of profit. You may not pollute the air because you don't care and you're a big mining conglomerate. And, little guys can also do damage to the environment. It's not only the big guys. So what are we doing to minimize our use of paper, for example? What are we doing to recycle things in our businesses? This is governance. It's not highfalutin stuff. It's simple, wonderful stuff that we can all do. And so doing the right things as well as doing things right, that's what governance is all about. And obviously it's scaled to fit. So we're going to see how that works in a minute. Before we go there, guys, are we comfortable with any of these concepts? Anyone like to add a comment?
Keith, I love your statement: profit, people, planet. I think when you speak about moral compass and that focus on the triple bottom line, that must be our responsibility as shareholders, right? And I think
Absolutely.
to know that we can tie that back into governance is brilliant, and it gives us a clear direction around what we need to focus on.
And we'll actually see that the IFC have included that in their framework, which is the framework we are loosely basing this little module on, because it's very, very good. So why reinvent the wheel? But we have put our own spin on that. So let's have a look at that's the superhero stuff, and you don't have to do that. No one says you're a bad guy if you don't do governance, but there's so many lovely reasons to do it that it really does make sense to do as much governance as we can. So the question is asked and is very often asked at what point do I have to start worrying about governance? I'm compliant. Let's say that I'm a good corporate citizen in the sense that I pay my taxes and I put in my returns and I've got my health and safety stuff because I'm working in construction and I'm very careful about that. And so I'm doing all of that stuff. But at what point do I need to worry about governance? And that question is asked at the bottom of page 22. And the answer really is, well, it depends who's running the business. And the more the owner is involved in the day-to-day operations, the less risk there is to the business because the owner is intimately involved with everything. The owner is doing the purchasing, the owner is doing the production, the owner is doing the selling, the owner is doing the marketing, the owner does the finance, the owner does almost everything. And so he doesn't have to worry about somebody else doing stuff that I'm not sure what they're doing, and I have to go and check what's happening there. So the more intimately involved the owner is, possibly the less governance we need. Although, having said that, as a one-man show, I can still do good governance. I can still have an environmental policy. I can still have a recycling policy. I can still have a whole lot of good governance going around me, which isn't about internal controls and segregation of duties and all sorts of hectic stuff, which we will have a look at in a minute. So let's have a look at the degree of scale now. And that's a very small little picture. It's in your workbooks as well. But what you see down the left here, guys, if you look at this left-hand column, that we've blown up over here. So we can actually see these are the 5 areas that we're going to be looking at to just see how to do it depending on the size of the business. The IFC also use 4 stages of growth for a business. And they're looking at businesses in, different size businesses. They look at a business of less than 50. They call it a startup. Now, guys, that's just a name. It's not necessarily that is a startup business. It's a small business, and it's known as stage 1 startup phase. But a lot of the guys that we're going to be talking to will always be less than 50, and that's where they like to be. They have no desire to grow their businesses to a multinational thing, but they can be in business for 15 years, 20 years, and there are 30 people in the organization. They're all very happy, and they've got good governance. So clearly they need to do less than a business of 250 people. Why? Because when you've got 250 people, you've got lots more layers, and you've got lots more you need more controls, because you can't look at everything as the directors or as the board. So the smaller you are, as it were, the less kind of mandatory governance you need. So it covers those 5 areas. We're going to come back and have a look at them again in a minute. But by now, your entrepreneurs, the guys you're talking to, are going to be saying, no, hang on. This is starting to sound like a whole lot of red tape, and their eyes are starting to glaze over, because the minute you show them a picture like this, they start thinking, no, hang on. I'm really not keen for this. But I think we need to talk about what's in it for me again before we go any further. So if you're a small business, good internal controls, basic separation of duties, in as far as is practical or practicable, will reduce risk. So the minute you are not doing everything yourself, the minute you have delegated functions to somebody else, you may not assume that they are going to do exactly what they're supposed to do, and that you don't have to check them because I love them and I trust them. Not on your life. Love them by all means. Trust them if you want to, but check them absolutely. So the minute you, as the entrepreneur, are not doing everything yourself, and you've given stuff away for somebody else to do, you have to replace that by some form of supervision. Otherwise, you are at risk, and you've brought risk into your business, which is now running around unchecked.
Keith,
Delegation of key functions. Thanks, Vibrant.
Could you allow me, because I think you're making such an important point in terms of constant referring back to the what's in it for me, right? And I think as trainers and consultants in this space, the only space where I think we could really go wrong is if we don't empathize, and if we don't actually have the thoughts around what is in it for the SMME. Because we could train the stuff to death, and everybody walks out of the classroom or out of the consulting office and does absolutely nothing, right?
Yeah.
So what you are saying now is, really understand what is it what the SMME wants to achieve. If they want scale, they're going to need to delegate. And if they want to delegate, there will be risk involved in the business.
Absolutely right. And in fact, well, let's go one step further. So we're talking about delegation of key functions, frees the founder or the owner from the tyranny of being the only accountable person for the whole show. So do you want to do all of this stuff in your business? Do you want to be any business needs all of these functions, and I'm not going to read them to you. You can see exactly what they are, but those functions are all critical to any functioning business. Now, please tell me, Mr. Entrepreneur or Madame Entrepreneur, who's doing those in your business? And if you're the only one in your business that's doing those, I put it to you, as the legal people say, that there's some of those that you simply aren't doing. Or you're doing really badly, or you're saying, I will get to it, but I'm too busy now. And so I don't need to do any marketing because I'm I can't handle any more business anyway. So marketing doesn't matter. Selling. Yeah, I'm always selling. Product development, no, I haven't got time for that. And so your business is stalling. And if you want to leave it like that, that's fine. But either you're going to have a heart attack before you're 40, and you might be the happiest guy in the graveyard, or the richest for that matter, but your business will never have reached the heights that it could have. So to be open to focusing on these functions and saying, you know what, I know I'm really bad. And Vibrant will tell you, my downfall is admin. I really hate admin. And if I can avoid it, I will. And so unless I've got a good admin person somewhere next to me in the business, my business won't work as well as it should. And for many, many years, I've had Angie, she's an admin machine, and she loves admin, and she does stuff that I can't do and I don't want to do. And because of her, my business has just been so much better than it would have without her. And it's a simple little bit of governance that said, I can't do this. I'm not doing it well. Let me bring in Angie, and then we can do this thing properly. And then it might be bring in somebody else, because I don't do marketing that well either. So gradually, we grow a business like that. Baba?
Keith, I think that's a great point, because I think that we can also all be classified as SMEs or startups. And I think
all of us, yes.
Yes, all of us, most of us as consultants also, in the people
indeed
in this class. And I think that we all fall into the trap of trying to do everything ourselves. And so I think that this is a very good point and a very good reminder to all of us that for the health and longevity of our businesses, we need to delegate, outsource. We also need to give some of our work to external consultants like ourselves, who may be better at doing certain tasks. Also, so that we can have the freedom of mind to actually innovate in our businesses and do the things that we love doing and the things that we do well. Yeah.
Then to your point, Keith, that governance actually speaks to scalability, right?
Yeah. And this is governance. Getting the right person in the admin function is about governance. It's about making sure that your business, that the returns go in on time, that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and there's no risk coming from stuff that you've forgotten long about because you're busy, busy running the business, busy selling, busy training, busy consulting. And I'm spending my time with my clients, and the next thing, there's something on fire on my desk because I forgot to do this or I forgot to do that. That's bad governance. So it's not fancy stuff. This is stuff that we all would benefit so much from. So guys, what we've done, if you want to go and have a look in your workbook once again, there's a checklist that says this is where you can say to your SMEs, right, where do I start? I don't know where to start. How do I wrap my arms around this thing? And we've put a checklist in the book for you to share with them. I've got it on a slide here. I don't want you to try and read it because it's very small, but these questions are all in the book. But if you look at them very quickly, the first question we're asking is, do the directors understand what's contained in the Memorandum of Incorporation of the company that they are directors of? Because if they don't, there's risk. Are the business's finances separate to the owner's finances? And it's yes or no. And then if it's yes, great. If it's no, well, action required. What are you going to do about it? Well, I need to find a copy of the MOI and I need to read it. And I need to make sure that my fellow directors have read it as well, because we want to hold one another accountable. And the transactions between business owners are recorded at arm's length, all of this kind of stuff. And I need to take number 5 out. It has been changed in the book, but not here. Do the directors know and understand their legal duties and liabilities according to the Companies Act of the country that we're talking to? I'll change that in the slide here, but it is like that in the book. So those are the questions. It's basic. Now, a lot of this is compliance. It's not governance yet, but just let's take stock. It's another little risk assessment tool. Where are you now? And because if there's a no anywhere there, that's risk. And guys, just let me refer you to number 23 as an example, and number 22. Have we got a statement of ethical intent for our business? This is how we do things around here. And I've heard Vibrant use an example, which I love, of a taxi owner who has an anti-corruption policy. And guess where it is? It's on the back of his front passenger seat for the guy in the back, for the passenger to read, that says, I do not take bribes. I will give you a receipt, and I will give you a receipt for the amount of the taxi fare, no more, no less. This is how we roll around here. Something basic, something cool. Do your employees understand our ethics here? Number 23, a very basic thing. Do you take backups of your data? Your company runs on an IT system, which is your laptop. What if your laptop gets stolen? What if it falls over? What if you have a head crash or a disk crash, whatever it is? Is your data backed up? It's obvious, but do you have a system in place which makes sure that happens? Because if you don't, that is a risk to your business that can kill you. So this is about first step. Get your compliance right. Get to understand where you are.
Keith, I'm scared of taking too much of your time, but this is so important.
No, Vibrant, you add lots of value.
Part of this really focuses on making your business more professional, right? But also it creates a customer experience of comfort and knowing that the customer is safe, right? I mean, yes. Imagine that passenger climbing into the back of the car, reading that statement and going, brilliant, I'm in the right place. This experience, I just feel like the person, if they're going to take care of anti-corruption, they will also take care of my safety, and I can trust them as a passenger in this process. Right? And the same goes for your employees. Suddenly you are evolving the culture of your organization to a better organization as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's where it starts to get blurred between compliance and governance, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's compliance or governance. It's what any good business owner will want for their business, because it just makes things so much better. So guys, if we stick to the workbook logic flow now, that is the first step for your SMEs. You might very well sit with them if you can get a bit of a consulting assignment with this. And the SME says, look, I don't know how to do this. Will you help me? Absolutely, I'll help you. And we can sit down, and this will take us 40 minutes to run through with the owner. And I promise you, as you go through this with the owners, you will see the lights coming on, and they'll say, geez, I never thought of that. Oh man, and really, I want to write a little policy, and I want to put it up in the staff room so everyone can see it. And now you suddenly transforming this dog show into a professional organization. And sorry, that might be a very unkind thing to say, but we all know sometimes the kind of businesses that are out there, they live from hand to mouth, and they need to elevate from that. So step number one, we're looking at basic compliance there, and it's nice to start there.
And guys, and if I may come in,
Baba.
Keith,
Please.
When you talked about sitting down with the SMEs, I just wanted to make a comment about this is where your coaching skills will also come in. So that's just making a connection between the modules that we are studying here, and noting that we shouldn't learn any of these modules in isolation, because they're all connected to one another.
And I think also your point, Baba, is incredibly valid, because coaching also means I don't do it for you. I show you how to do it, but it's still you that must do it. A consulting assignment, the guy says, look, I haven't got time to do this. Will you help me? Yes, okay, I'll do it, but I'm going to charge you. But the fact that I've done it does not absolve you as the business owner. This is your policy. It's not mine. And you will own it, and you will live it. And I will training, I'd like to think. And thank you for that. Baba, okay, so now let's move on. And here is a fairly, you might think that this is a bit mundane and it's a little bit too much focus, but guys, this is an area which gives us more trouble when it comes to governance and compliance than most. And one of the big issues in the anti-corruption material is also conflict of interest. That is a major issue in the anti-corruption section. And guess what? That's where most directors get themselves into trouble, either with the law or with the shareholders or with the company, because it's quite a, guys, it's very schizophrenic. You will know the feeling because you're also business owners. So you are at once the owner of the business. So you're the shareholder. That's great. That's a hat that you will wear from time to time. Then you are the director, which carries with it legal responsibilities. And, the director is different to a shareholder somehow. And then you're also the manager, you're the driver, you're the sales guy, you're the finance guy, you're the marketing guy. And it's very easy to get totally lost in amongst all of this stuff. And it's difficult to separate oneself from things. So I'd like to suggest just to use the analogy of a caregiver. If you're a director, remember, your duty as a director is first and foremost to the company. That is who you serve. Indirectly, you are serving the shareholders. But your duty is to protect that company from risk, from too much risk, from too little risk. Your duty is to manage the risk attached to that company for the benefit of all the stakeholders. You have a duty as a leader to lead that company to prosperity, once again. And your duty is also to put the company's interests ahead of your own, first and foremost. And that's one of the most difficult things to ask human beings to do, is to put somebody else ahead of ourselves. I think it's quite a very big, it's a big ask to get people to understand. And so if you think about a caregiver and a director, if we look on page 30 in the manuals, it says, in the context of a company or organization, which entity will the following characters represent? So the relatives. Now remember, you've been appointed as a caregiver to look after this child. The child's parents, let's say, are professionals. They both work and they've got money. So they've said to Baba, you are now, you've got all the credentials. You're an experienced, qualified professional caregiver. We'd like you to be the one to grow our little girl to be the child that she must become. Baba says, fine, I'm in. And now off she goes and she starts to do what she does. So in her role as caregiver / director, who would the relatives of that child be, do you think? If you think about the family situation, who are we talking about in the company situation?
Keith, I would say...
Who's interested in this child?
I would say the parents, right?
Yeah. And the aunties and the uncles. And
grandparents.
Who are they? Yeah. Grandparents,
yeah.
Siblings maybe. So in the corporate environment, who would those be? Those would be shareholders. They might be, family of shareholders. They might be, what about you've got your specialist caregiver or guardian. That would be the director. What about the child? Who's the child represent?
Sure, that could be that could be anyone in the company, right? Employees, right?
Yeah.
The company, hey.
Yeah.
Yes.
Could, and then of course the the others, the schools, the friends, the churches, the clubs, the extended family would be the other stakeholders in the business, isn't it? All the suppliers, the customers, the
vendors,
the banks, the community where we. So once again, you talk to Mervyn King about this stuff, and I have the pleasure of knowing Mervyn actually quite well. And he gets passionate about this. He gets tears in his eyes when he talks about what state we have left the world in for our grandchildren. He talks about the communities that our business serves, but also is served by. We draw our staff, we draw our customers, we draw our suppliers from a community of individuals around us. And are we doing the right thing by them? So there's our triple bottom line coming through again. So here we go now. We have the situation where the parents are actually the owners of the entity, as it were. The professional is the director or the caregiver. And of course, conflict can arise because now the parents come home and they see this child speaking badly. She eats badly. She's got no manners. She's rude. She's using language which the parents don't approve of. And they may very well call the caregiver in and say, Baba, what are you teaching this child? She's learning the wrong stuff. And we don't like language like that. And you're not teaching her how to use a knife and fork nicely. And we're not happy with this. So, come on, we need you to change, or we might have to move you on. And we'll appoint another person to run this business because, we're not happy with the results. So conflict between shareholders and directors is very, very common. The opposite can also happen where the specialist, the professional director, caregiver would line the parents up and say, listen, you can't give this child ice cream and chips for supper. That's not good. I'm teaching her to eat veggies and she's loving her veggies. Now you go and undo all the good that I've done. And so, hey, don't you butt out of this, leave it to me. And the shareholders say, oh, sorry, okay, fine, we get it. And so there's give and take between directors and shareholders. Now, when that person is one and the same, director and owner, it starts to get very difficult, guys, to separate and do. And seriously, I've got to have a meeting because the Memorandum of Incorporation says this is a director job to do. It's not a shareholder job. Shareholders don't make these decisions. This is what directors are supposed to decide. And on the other hand, the memorandum might also say, when it comes to, for example, issuing new shares to new shareholders, that's not a director decision. That's a shareholder decision. Now, if you go and hold the wrong meeting, because you've got to do a little, a resolution. Now, if you have a board resolution as opposed to a shareholder resolution, it might be completely contrary to what's in the memorandum and therefore invalid completely. And with meaning to do the right thing, you have just messed up. And it becomes unenforceable, and somewhere down the track, it can blow up in your face. So knowing these things, guys, is just pretty important. So let's quickly just run through the duties, generally speaking. And what I want us to know, when we go back to our country, or when we are now in our country of choice, where we're going to be doing this training, guys, please, you need to find out what are the statutory duties of directors and what are the common law duties of directors, because they are very different. Our South African Companies Act, and it was a mess, but now I'm quite proud of it because it got sent back and got sorted out because it was a total disaster before. But it's one of the more ugly Companies Acts when it comes to being tough on directors. It's very, very tough on directors. And the statutory duties are quite extensive. And when I say statutory duties, it means if you break one of those statutory obligations, you're not going to get sued by the shareholders. The cops will come after you because you've broken the law. It's as simple as that. It's not, oh, the shareholders are aggrieved and they want compensation from the directors. No, if you've broken a statute, all we do is we take a docket to the police and we say, there, off you go, sort him out. And so now you've got the cops after you as opposed to the shareholders. I'm not sure which is worse, but civil versus criminal is important for the directors to know. But whichever way it goes, guys, these 10 things are something that you need to make sure that your directors know. First and foremost, act in the best interests of the company. That's your job. Do not put your personal needs ahead of the company's needs. And the case law, guys, is littered with mainly that, where directors come to know that there's a piece of ground for sale, and I know my company, I'm a director of this big company, and I know this company's looking for a piece of ground. What do? I go and buy it from the seller, and then through a few other little front companies, I ended up selling it to my company that I'm supposed to be acting in the best interest of. And that is probably one of the most common things that you find going on. And that's just not on. Sorry, it doesn't work like that. So act in the best interest of the company. Don't abuse your position to gain personal advantage. Now, don't forget, if you're working for a listed company, there's a thing called insider trading, which directors can be guilty of because they know, for example, that Sasol is about to report a terrible financial year. And quickly before those results are announced, I go and sell all my shares. And then suddenly the shares crash and, I got out before the trouble started and I've gained personal advantage because I had inside knowledge. Don't knowingly cause harm to the company. So knowing that this is going to hurt the company, I go ahead anyway because I'm going to get something out of it. Communicate material facts. That's fairly obvious. So you've got to share these with the board. You do not keep quiet about things. Now, the problem, guys, we have with this is governance. Now, governance says, how are you going to prove afterwards that you did communicate the facts? How are you going to prove that you acted in good faith? How are you going to prove that you gathered data? And how do you prove it? It's in the minutes. You've had a meeting. You've put it in the minutes. And it might be a situation where Baba is saying, guys, I don't agree with this decision. Hey, I think this is going to blow up in our face. And Vibrant and I are saying, no, we think it's a great idea. Baba at least is saying, guys, please put me down as a no. I don't think it's a good idea. At least afterwards, then it's there for everybody to see that she said she didn't like it. And it was Vibrant and I that outvoted her, and the shareholders can then see, if they want to look at the minutes, how did we get to that decision? It might be that it turns out okay, and Baba says, well, actually, you guys were right, and yeah, sorry, I doubted you, but it's okay. It's all in the minutes. Number 8, disclosing personal financial interests. So now we're about to vote on something in a meeting. Now, obviously, there's a register of financial interests. That's one of the public documents that any business should have. So if I've got multiple directorships, multiple shareholdings, that should be in a register there so that anybody on the board, any shareholder can look at it and say, Baba, you're with Rainbow, but I see also you're with SIPE. Hey, hang on. Why did SIPE get this job? Why did Rainbow get this job? You're pitching and catching. That's conflict of interest. No. If you look at the minutes of that meeting, I put my hand up and I disclosed my interest again. And guess what? I recused myself. And it's there in the minutes. I did not vote on that decision. So sorry for you. Okay, Baba, good stuff. Done. But it's documented. And you can't have meetings without minutes because you may as well then not have meetings. So that's what we're talking about, guys. Make sure your directors know the stuff. It's the moral compass kind of stuff, as you can see. There's nothing terribly, mysterious about any of this. And guys, finally now, we're coming up to kind of 10 minutes to go. Let's look at the key areas of governance. But before we do that, guys, anybody uncomfortable with being able to get this stuff across to your SME directors? I know it's quite a tricky section. How are you feeling? Do you think you can do this?
You know, when I think of this, this is the time to start getting into the head of the SMME that you're working with. At this point in time, if you're training SMMEs, there might be guys in the room that start getting uncomfortable, right? They start moving around and they just feel a little bit as if their world is a little bit different than they intended. And it might be because they have a brother that they have done business with 20 years ago, and this brother has got 40% interest in the company, and now this brother has left them or has gone away for some kind of reason, and they've made this company all about themselves, right? And now suddenly the conscience is starting to kick in here. And I think it's really important that we step in as a trainer at this point and we start thinking back to, you need to change behavior and you need to impart knowledge. Right. Yeah. And part of that, of your job, is not to become the preacher, right? Like we said in Baba's training, but actually to facilitate that conscience in terms of, what is the right steps that we should put in place now? What do you think is the right steps to put in place? Also to know that at this time, there might be things that they have already done wrong. And your role is not judge, jury, and executioner during the training. Right, your job is to facilitate, to guide, and I do think there is a job for you to do as the consultant and the trainer to actually help to say, okay, what can we do now? Right, this has happened. What do we do now? Baba, you look like you want to say something as well.
No, I'm just totally agreeing with you, and it's just good stuff. And so I was sitting up in my chair to listen properly, but
excellent. And guys, once again, if it's a sole guy in the business, if he's the only director there, it's going to be a totally different story to where there are maybe 3 or 4 directors who are all shareholders, because now, if the sole director, owner, shareholder messes up, it's only himself that really has to suffer the fallout. But when you've got outside shareholders involved, governance becomes absolutely critical, because those outsiders who are not in the business day to day, they will ask you, what did you do? Please explain. And if you can't do that, so it's a very simple thing here, maybe, of setting up a monthly meeting, setting up a directors meeting, setting up an operations meeting, setting up a marketing meeting, and keeping minutes and referring back to them, and holding people accountable and putting deadlines and dates and who's to do what. And that is governance. It's just good for the business. It's not rocket science stuff.
Keith, this takes me back to my early days in coaching and helping entrepreneurs to think through the roles of their business. And what we used to have a training exercise, is a cap with the word MD on it, and then another cap with the word shareholder on it. And what we would do is we would take the cap off and put on a new cap, because it symbolizes that I'm now stepping into this role. And I think it might be something that if you're listening, think about maybe using that in your training as well, to help to wear the different caps in the business.
I like that. I love it. Thank you. That's fantastic. Guys, the last point on this slide, just to make sure every director should know what's in the Memorandum of Incorporation, because it's the rules that are specific to that particular company. Most of them are fairly standard, but that is the company's founding document, and it will have exclusions and it will have limitations on what directors may and may not do. And you don't want to fall foul of that, because sometimes it can't be fixed afterwards. If you've operated beyond your powers as a director, it might not be able to be fixed afterwards. So we don't want to get into having to change the memorandum or to pass special resolutions and stuff to fix what really didn't need to be broken in the first place. So guys, those of you with a legal background know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've got an accounting background, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't, it's okay. Just follow these steps. It's enough awareness for the SME owner to at least think about the stuff before they do anything major in their business. Guys, good stuff. Now, the last bit, and this is actually, it's a big piece, but it's very quick to go through. And that is the 5 key areas of governance that we've spoken about already. These are from the IFC document. These are the 5 ones going down the side, and these are the areas of governance which they say are important. So culture and commitment to good governance. Now, depending on how small or how big you are, scale to fit, we are going to look at stage 1 and stage 2 only here. We're not going into companies 350 or more. They might be classified as SMEs, you know, in the States, but certainly in Africa, those are big companies. So we're looking at companies generally that are going to be either in stage 1 or stage 2. And we're going to see how does this apply, each one of these apply in stage 1 and apply in stage 2. So culture and commitment, decision-making, strategic oversight, who's doing that? Do we share it? Is it delegated? How does that work? What risk governance do we need? Do we need internal controls? If it's a one-man show, no, I do everything myself. So I don't need to check up on myself. I know what I'm doing. But as soon as I've devolved my responsibilities to other people, the need for internal controls arises to a greater or a larger extent. Disclosure and transparency, once again, if we have external shareholders, that becomes way more important. Even if we don't have external shareholders, do you share with your employees? Do they know if you've had a good month? Do they know if you've had a bad month? I've done lots of work with workers over the years, particularly with union members, and their cry is always the same. How come when we're doing well, no one tells us, but as soon as we're doing badly, oh yeah, now we've got to know that we're doing badly. And a good business leader will share, you know, we had a great month, and share the loot around, you know, little bonus for everybody. It's only a couple of bucks, but you know what, we had a good month. Let's share, let's have some fun. And it's transparent. People will know day to day what's going on in the business. It's not arms around the results and no one can see what's going on in the books. Obviously, there's certain things that will remain confidential. That's normal. But how is that going? Ownership, once again, to what extent is this a family-owned business? Is it one owner? Is it a few owners? How do we regulate affairs between owners? And if there's only one owner, what would happen if this owner should die? Is there is there a will in place? Is there a shareholder agreement in place? What are we doing about that? And obviously, as the business grows and new owners come on board, and maybe the founders and the original owners play a lesser and lesser role, you know, that whole thing will change. And so, guys, what we've got on the next, and this is once again in your books, the checklists are all there. We've taken each one of those headings down the side, commitment to good governance, and we're saying, if a business is in stage 1, remember this is a sort of what they call a startup stage. It's a less than 50 kind of a show. So imagine a business of 30 people, guys, just for the argument's sake here. There are a lot of people there. I bet you the owner's not doing everything herself or himself. People have got roles and responsibilities. The minute you have that, you need internal controls and stuff, which are coming down the track. So in stage 1, owner's personal goals and business goals are one. Absolutely. Nothing wrong with that. Owner directly manages all operational matters. Command and control. Do it myself. My vision is clear to me. No one else might know what it's about, but that's where I am in stage 1. And that's fine. It's okay. But what we're saying is, before you can move into stage 2, and by the way, you can move into stage 2 long before you've got more than 50 people in the business. You can move into stage 2 once you're ready. But the prerequisite for moving to stage 2 is that you have fulfilled everything in stage 1 100%. So you've got, for example, fluid ad hoc structures. Owner's very involved in everything. That's all fine. We're saying it's good. Don't change it. It's okay. Once you've satisfied that, you can start moving now to phase 2. And so once again, a checklist for your owners to say, right, let's see where you are. Are you genuinely in still stage 1? Do you like being in stage 1? Or if we are to move to stage 2, now, if we just stick with the top one, the owner's goals are separate from the business goals now. Are you prepared for that? What's the difference, And so it goes. And that's how we start to shift the guys from this muddling through in stage 1 to starting to put some structure in place. And guys, I know we're out of time, but it's very self-explanatory. If you go through the notes, if you go through the slides, the next slide takes the next section and says, okay, how do we make decisions here? Stage 1, owner generally does everything. Stage 2, hang on, I've got managers, I've got others here. I'll approve, we might make joint decisions, but I'll take recommendations from you. You will know what Steve Jobs said. I love what Steve Jobs said. He said, I never understand why we employ clever people and tell them what to do. We should employ clever people and ask them what we should do. And I really hope we can follow that advice. If I need help, I want to get people that can do what I can't do, because that's what's lacking in my business. So bring in an expert, listen to them, give them responsibilities, but have the controls in place, guys. That's really what it's about. An advisory board is a good idea. If you can't afford full-time directors, full-time non-executive directors, you can bring in some, and there are lots of people around that are really happy to help. They've been there, they've done it, and they're very happy to share their knowledge for free to help SMEs. There are a lot of those people around. And guys,
Keith,
just following the same logic. Vibrant.
Yes, I know we're out of time, and I mean, thank you so much for taking us through all of this. And I can see your passion as well for the subject just shines through. Keith, it makes me think every one of these areas, when you're working with this company, you don't wear the hat of governance consultant and general consultant. There is no two different hats. It is the same hat, right? So if you, I'm speaking to the trainer out there, if you look at these different areas, when you work with an SME and you prepare them for growth, typically you're going to go through these areas and help them grow, right? It helps you to actually prepare them, get them ready for growth. Because when you're an SME...
It's actually a great consulting model as it is.
Absolutely.
It happens to be called governance and compliance, but this is a great, if you use these steps totally outside of this framework, you're going to be helping your clients immensely.
Spot on.
Thank
you, Keith. Thank you, Dr. Garden, and thank you, Barbara Jackson.
Thank you, guys.
I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Vibrant.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
your contributions.